Study of Genesis. We're on our third lesson tonight. We're going to be studying chapters 5 and 6. And I have already handed out your handout for you, so you can look at that handout as we go. And that'll speed things up a little bit as I go through. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to read one paragraph at a time, kind of our usual procedures, and then we'll ask a couple questions. Okay? All right, let's start with, we're looking at Genesis chapter 5, and this is Adam's descendants to Noah. You know, there's a lot of people that they wonder if there's any value in looking at these lineages, you know, who begat who, and how old were they when they had their son, and then how old were they when they died. I've got a chart, and you can look at the last page of your handout, and you'll see a copy of that chart. And on that, I've taken the names in this first chapter, chapter 5, these descendants, and I've built a chart out of that, and you're going to see the value of being able to use this information, because as we record, as the writer records the ages of the people when their children were born and how old they were before they died. You're able to put all that together in a chart, and then by compiling it all that way, you're able to see how many years went by before the flood. And so as on the chart that you see on your handout, you see that it was 1,769 years from Adam being created until the flood. And so it's a very useful tool. It's neat to see just the very important things. You see on the line there where it talks about Methuselah. Methuselah means when he is gone, it will come. Okay, and he's talking about the flood. When the destruction of the earth happens, it was projected by Methuselah's dad, Enoch. When Enoch named him, he named him Methuselah because he had been, the Lord had showed him there that his son, when his son died, the flood was going to come. And you know, Enoch, the one that was the father of Methuselah, he didn't die. He was translated, if you will. The father, it says that he walked with God, and he was not, because God took him. Yeah. He went straight to heaven. I had a pastor one time, he said, Enoch was walking with God, and God said, well, you're closer to my house than we are to yours, so just come on home. You know, I thought that was pretty neat how he said that. But let's go ahead and start reading these, and just understand there's great value in looking at these names and these dates. Now, you'll notice that we have Adam's descendants to Noah, and that by compiling that gives us an idea when the flood is going to come. And then in chapter 10, we have, chapter 9, verse 18, we begin to see Noah's descendants, and it says, the nations descended from Noah, and then we go from Shem's descendants. That's Noah's son, and that's in chapter 11. And so you have the same similar chart that you can compile from that list of descendants from Shem. And so as you compile that, you can get an idea of how many years goes by after the flood before Abram is born, and you can see that on your chart. Abram was 325 years old, there was 325 years before Abram was born. From the flood, 325 years. So Abram was really close to the flood. And all of from Noah all the way down to Abram, all of his lineage were all alive when Abram was born. From Noah all the way down, they were all still alive. And so Abram was about 25 years old, according to the chart, before Noah died. And so I think that it's amazing to consider that Abram, as a young man, had the opportunity to actually meet Noah and meet Shem there and see, Shem was the one that God said the seed of the woman would come through the line of Shem. And that's where we see Israel and all of them coming out, Abraham coming out of Shem. So it's very interesting these studying these descendants. So let's start with chapter 5, verse 1. This is the book of the generations of Adam when God created man. He made him in the likeness of God, male and female he created them, and he blessed them and named them man when they were created. When Adam had lived 130 years, he fathered a son in his own likeness, after his image, and named him Seth. The days of Adam after he fathered Seth were 800 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. And so you'll notice on that chart how many people lived to be over 900 years. That was pretty much the standard, was to live over 900 years before the flood. So in our first question, and we'll look at let me see here. We'll look at the first 4 questions here on our list before we go to the next paragraph. When God created man, he made him in the likeness of God. He made him in the likeness of God. And what did God name the male and female after he had blessed them? No, he named a man. Man. And man means Adam. And then remember, Adam, when the sin came in, when after Eve had been cursed there, that's when Adam names her Eve. But prior to that, they were both known as man, just human being, really, is what we're looking at there. What was the name of Adam's son that was born when he was 130 years old? Seth, you remember that whole situation we looked at yesterday, where Adam and Eve had Cain and Abel, and Cain kills Abel. Abel was the righteous son. And then they go 130 years there until Adam has another son whose name is Seth, who begins to follow the Lord again. Okay? So for a long time there, after Cain had killed Abel, no one was seeking the Lord because none of Cain's descendants were seeking the Lord. All right, and then that fourth question, how old was Adam when he died? 930 years old. Okay? All right, so let's look at that next paragraph. When Seth had lived 105 years, he fathered Enosh. Seth lived after he fathered Enosh 807 years and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Seth were 912 years, and he died. And I'm going to continue on with this list all the way down until we get to Enoch, okay? When Enosh had lived 90 years, he fathered Kenan. Enosh lived after he had fathered Kenan 815 years and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Enosh were 905 years, and he died. When Kenan had lived 70 years, he fathered Mahalalel. Kenan lived after he fathered Mahalalel 840 years and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Kenan were 910 years, and he died. You know, one of the things that just catches my attention as we're reading these ages is how old they were when they first had their first son. Isn't that interesting? They're pretty old. I mean, but in like 70 years old. Look here, when Mahalalel on verse 15, he had lived 65 years. He fathered Jared, and Mahalalel lived after he'd fathered Jared 830 years. It says, thus all the days of Mahalalel were 895, and he died. Out of all of them, he's the only one that lives less than 900 years. When Jared had lived 100, or other than Enoch. When Jared had lived 162 years, he fathered Enoch. Jared lived after he fathered Enoch 800 years and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Jared were 962 years, and he died. That's an interesting, he's the second oldest one in world history. 962 years. We know that Methuselah lives to be 969, but Jared, his grandfather, lived to be 962. When Enoch had lived 65 years, now catch this, it's 65 years, and then it's 300 years. How many years? I mean, if those were days, that would be the number of days in a year, 365, okay? But he lives to be 65 years old when he has his son Methuselah. Enoch walked with God. Notice this. There was actually must have been, when he was 65, he must have had some sort of a saving moment happen to him, because it doesn't appear that he was walking with God before that. But when he turned 65 and had his son Methuselah, it says, after he fathered Methuselah, 300 years, Enoch walked with God after he fathered Methuselah 300 years and had other sons and daughters. So he started his walk, his faith walk there, if you will, after Methuselah was born. Thus all the days of Enoch were 365 years. And so look at this. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. So he didn't die. Thus, notice what it says. Thus all the days of Enoch were 365 years. Okay? It doesn't say that he died. It just says that he was translated there when he was not anymore, for God took him. And then verse 25, when Methuselah had lived 187 years, he fathered Lamech. Now he was on up there when he had his first son, Lamech. Methuselah lived after he fathered Lamech 782 years and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died. And if you look at the chart there, Methuselah had lived the longest in history. But that is on the chart. At his death, that is when the flood comes. Okay, and we'll look at the flood as we progress on here, starting at chapter 7. When Lamech had lived, in chapter 6, we'll be beginning the plan that God has for the flood. When Lamech had lived 182 years, he fathered a son and called his name Noah, saying, out of the ground that the Lord has cursed this one shall bring us relief from our work and from the painful toil of our hands. Lamech lived after he fathered Noah 595 years and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Lamech were 777, and he died. After Noah was 500 years old, Noah fathered Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And so you can see that Noah actually lives 100 more years after Shem, Ham, and Japheth are born. And he's 500 years when they're born. He's 600 years old when the flood comes. So he has 100 years with the kids, with his sons, to prepare the ark before the flood comes. Okay, so now chapter 6, let's look at chapter 6. When man began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Then the Lord said, my spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came in to the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. So you can see there. Now we're going to turn to the second page of the notes there, and let's look at some of these questions there in this first paragraph, because that first paragraph is packed with information. It's just fully packed with information. First question, who are the sons of God?
Fallen angels.
Okay, so they're fallen angels. Okay, now how do we know that those are fallen angels? Any idea? Okay? So, there's some people that believe, as they interpret this, what'd you say, Debbie?
In verse 4 it says, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days.
Yes. Yeah. And also afterward. Why was he saying that? Because just prior to that, the sons of God are intermarrying with the daughters of men, and what's going to be the outcome of that? Offspring, and the offspring of them are called Nephilim. Okay? Now, the reason we know that the sons of God, quote unquote sons of God, are fallen angels is because there are several reasons. One of them is in Job chapter 1 and chapter 2. We see a scene in heaven where the Father is there in heaven, and the angels are coming in to come before the Lord, give an account of what they've been doing, and they're referred to as the sons of God. Okay, and Satan comes in among them. Now, all the angels would have been considered sons of God, but we know that the ones that are interacting here are going to be the fallen angels, and the reason that we know that is because they're actually trying to. What do you think their goal is by intermarrying with women? That's exactly right. So there's a plot. God says over in chapter 3, when he curses the serpent, he says that the seed of the woman is going to crush your head, and you're going to bruise his heel. And so he knows, Satan knows, that he's got to somehow corrupt the seed of the woman so that the seed of the woman that's going to war against him, he can't be born. So he hatches this plan, it seems, and he has the fallen angels to leave their first estate, which was they were spirit, and they left that first estate and they put on human flesh. So now they could have sexual interaction with the women of the earth, and they could try and corrupt all of the children that were born, corrupt their DNA, so that now you got, instead of having human beings, you got half human, half fallen angel, and the outcome of that was the Nephilim, as Debbie mentioned earlier. So it says, and then, so what did the Lord do when all that happened? He said, "My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years." Now, what do you think that means, this 120 days? That's exactly right. Now, there are some people, this confuses people, because some people get the idea that human life, the lifespan of humans is going to be 120 years. Okay, but that's not what this is referring to. And the reason we know that is because he says, "My spirit shall not abide in man forever." In other words, if you look over at this in the book of Job, Elihu, during his speech, he says that if God desired to, he could remove his spirit, recall, if you will, his spirit from human beings, and all of us would return to dust. And so what he's saying here is all of man that's on the earth, they're going to die because they're going to drown in the flood, and their spirit is going to go back to God. And then he says, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, like Debbie had mentioned, and also afterwards. Now, that second comment there, and also afterwards, that means after the flood, the Nephilim would come back. Now, when do we see evidence of the Nephilim coming back after the flood? David and Goliath. Goliath is one of the examples of a Nephilim, and he had 4 brothers. And so when does that happen? Remember, the only way that these Nephilim come into being is you have a fallen angel that has sexual relations with a woman on the earth, and the outcome of that is a Nephilim. So what you've got here, anytime you have Satan worship, okay, and how we saw the situation of Sodom. Sodom, you had rampant homosexuality going on there, and so they were actually having, sounds like, having sexual relations with fallen angels. The men were having those relations because it was when, you remember the two angels that came into the town that that Lot took to his house? What happened when those two angels, they were good angels, they weren't the fallen angels, but what happened when they came into Lot's house? It actually says that all the men of the city, to the last one, they all surrounded Lot's house because they wanted to get after those two angels because they wanted to have sex with them. Okay? So if that's happening with the men, you know it's happening with the women too. And so that's where those, in those cities where that was going on, you're going to have women that are having offspring that are Nephilim. And that's where we see that Goliath come from in that situation. So that's what he means when he says, and also afterwards. When the sons of God came into the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. And by the way, we learn from Jesus, the Lord, as he was here, he says that in the last days, there are going to be Nephilim on the earth again. So that is the time we're in, and we can speculate that the Antichrist, there during the tribulation period, that he is going to be a Nephilim, because he's going to be able to do work miracles or wonders. Okay, mighty wonder, and that's what the Nephilim could do because they were half fallen angel. They had powers. And that's why those, what we see with the Greek gods, for example, those are stories of the Nephilim before the flood. So they were mighty men of renown. Okay, so a lot of those stories were somewhat true about the things that those Nephilim could do there before the flood, before God destroyed it. It says here, they came into the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. So let's look at the next paragraph now. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Now see, this is as they're corrupting the seed of the woman, the offspring, the Nephilim offspring, they're only evil because they have their father is a fallen angel. They are not spiritually human. They're not spiritually human, so they have a corrupted spirit. So they only can think about things in an evil way. They're only thinking about and planning evil. Okay. And it says continually. That's the plots and schemes in their mind and in their heart is to do evil things. It says here, and the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out man whom I have created from the face of the land, man and animal and creeping things, and birds of the heavens. For I am sorry that I have made them. Look at this now. So what this is saying is all the seed of the woman at the end, toward the end, just before the flood, all the seed of the woman had been corrupted. And so everybody on the earth was thinking and doing only evil things continually. Okay? But look what he says. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Now look down at verse 9. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God, and Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupted in God's sight, and the earth was filled with violence. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And God said to Noah, and so God's going to say, so why did Noah find favor with God? How was Noah, what did God say as far as Noah goes, that he was a righteous man? So what made Noah righteous there before God? His DNA, well, he did walk with God, but his DNA had not been corrupted. In other words, he was not a descendant of a fallen angel. All the other seed of the woman that was there right before the flood, they had all been corrupted. These fallen angels were in their plan was to corrupt them all, so that no one would be born that was a child of a human being. They were all children of fallen angels. But Noah, his seed, his DNA had not been corrupted, and so he found favor with God. God could use him once he destroyed all the rest of these Nephilim in the world. After the flood, Noah would be able to be used, and his children, to start over, if you will, with repopulating the world. And the Nephilim plot that Satan had done will have failed, because they didn't get to Noah's parents and prevent Noah from being born. Okay, so let's go on down to verse 13. And God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end of all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence through them. Have you noticed how violent things are becoming in our world today? This is how you know that the influence of the devil is going forth more and more. And why is that the case? Because there are more and more people in this world worshiping the devil.
Amen.
They're worshiping the devil. They're worshiping fallen angels, and out of that comes violence in their minds. Their hearts are only violent continually. Okay? He says, I will destroy them with the earth. So what's he do? He comes up with a plan. God had already had a plan for Noah on how to do this. Now you think about the how huge this plan is. If you were the last human being that had not been, your DNA had not been corrupted, you notice how Satan's plan continually is to corrupt the DNA. He wants to corrupt the DNA of humans. And that's what's happened. There's actually a plot today for them to corrupt the DNA of humans. Okay? Well, when Noah, being the last of them that had not been, their DNA had not been corrupted, he gives Noah a plan, and it's to make an ark. Now think about how Noah didn't have any power to. You know, he didn't have any vast equipment like skyscraper type. These great big, what do you call them? The ones that are able to pick up these beams and everything. These big cranes. He didn't have any cranes to work with, and yet God has given him an assignment to build an ark, as we read here, that's as big as an aircraft carrier. Okay, and it's all out of wooden beams and all that. So let's read the plan that God has for Noah. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you are to make it. The length of the ark, 300 cubits. Remember, a cubit is about 18 inches. So 300, that'd be 450 feet. Okay. Its breadth is 50 cubits, which would have been about 75 feet. And its height, 30 cubits, 45 feet. Make a roof for the ark. So it's going to have a roof. It's going to have It's going to be 45 feet tall. Okay? Now Noah's making this, and he doesn't have any cranes or any other kind of thing like that. But you know what he does have? He has dinosaurs. And see, the dinosaurs, although the people in our teach in our schools that the dinosaurs were violent toward human beings, I don't believe that was true before the flood. Okay, I believe that all the animals were not violent toward humans before the flood. It was only after the flood that we saw that happening. So if the dinosaurs were not mean toward human beings, then because they all come into the ark, Noah's there and God's bringing them 2 by 2 there to fill up the ark with all the animals. So obviously there wasn't this enmity between man and the animals at that time. So he was able to use animal power, if you will, to help him, I believe, to build the ark. And that's how he was able to do it, him and his 3 sons. Okay? He says, make a roof for the ark and finish it to a cubit above, and set the door of the ark in its side. Make it with lower, second, and third decks. For behold, I will bring a flood of water upon the earth to destroy all flesh, in which is the breath of life under heaven. Everything that is on the earth shall die. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. Now notice this. I think here, I think Noah is the only one that is righteous. Because what does God say? He's going to make his covenant with Noah. He's not making his covenant with his children. He's making it with Noah, and then he's going to have Noah's children, his wife and his children, to come in to the ark with him, along with all the animals. Now, where is another case where that the husband was righteous, but the wife, you could see, was not righteous? Even though God was going to spare her, she was not righteous. You remember where that was? Lot's wife. Lot's wife, God sends those 2 angels in there to get Lot out of that city. Okay, so what do? They take Lot by the hand finally, and they take his wife by the hand, and they take their 2 daughters by the hand, and they take them out of the city. He's having mercy on Lot. Okay, now it was Lot that was the one that was righteous. His 2 daughters, you'll see after that, are not righteous, and his wife is not righteous. She's longing for the city, to where she disobeys and looks back, and she turns into a pillar of salt. Okay, but when God saves a righteous man, he saves his family too. Usually, what happens there, even though they might not be righteous. And so, he says, and of every living thing of all flesh, you shall bring 2 of every sort into the ark to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female, of the birds according to their kinds, and of the animals according to their kinds, and every creeping thing of the ground according to its kind. 2 of every sort shall come into you to keep them alive. Also take with you every sort of food that is eaten, and store it up. It shall serve as food for you and for them. Noah did this. Now look at this. It's very important. It's not a small thing here. It took him 100 years to build this ark. 100 years. You're talking about a task. He was already 500 years old when God comes to him with this project. It takes him 100 years to build it. So he's 600 years old when the Lord finally, we're going to see in the next chapter where the Lord seals up the door, closes the ark. It's the Lord that closes the door after everything's in it. The Lord seals it with his covenant, and they're able to live through it. But that last verse there, 22, Noah did this. He did all that God commanded him. You know something? Noah had a great task. But he did all that God commanded him. That's what we need to do. God has given us commandments as children of God, as followers of Jesus Christ. And He wants us to do all that the Lord there commanded us to do. The Great Commission, go into all the world, preach the gospel to every creature, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you. And lo, I'm with you always, even to the end of the age. So that's what we're doing here. We're teaching everything that God had commanded us, teaching His Word, working toward this transformation of the mind. You know, we're in a spiritual warfare. And the enemy is continually attacking us in our mind, trying to get us to make bad decisions where the Lord can't bless us. So that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to train our minds to know what God has commanded us to do, and to fear Him and to obey Him. We need to love God, and we need to fear Him, and we need to obey Him, just like Noah did here. Okay, so that is chapter 6 and chapter 7. We'll continue on in our next Bible study looking at chapter what's that? Excuse me, 5 and 6. Thank you, Sue. Sue keeps me on track. We're gonna look at 7 and 8 in the next Bible study. It would have been pretty boring if we would have started with chapter 6 again, or missed 7 and went straight to 8. But we're going to do 7 and 8 in our next Bible study. So let's pray, and we'll bless the meal. We'll have our fellowship time after this, and then our prayer time, and we'll eat some good food. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for allowing us to be here to learn more about the flood, about the Nephilim, about the fallen angels, and all these schemes and plots of the devil to destroy us. But we're thankful, Lord, for Noah. We're thankful for your plan. Lord, you say that with you all things are possible, and that with you nothing is impossible. And so we see that with Noah. Everyone had been corrupted. The fallen angels were successful, and Satan and his plan and plot seemed to be successful. But you made a way so that Noah would be able to be free and have a clean DNA that had not been polluted, and then you, even though all hope looked like it was lost because everything was so evil continually, yet we're never lost with you, Lord, and we know that you're watching out for us and helping us. We thank you for what you're doing. Please bless the food for nourishment of our bodies. Now bless our fellowship, our prayer time, and we thank you for it. In Jesus' name, amen.